Okay, so welcome to our first podcast. My name is Mayeli.
I'm Jessica C, Jessica Crozier.
And I'm Jessica Jenkins.
And this podcast is going to be consisting around the second module, observing children and engaging in pedagogical documentation. So, what did you guys think about the module?
I thought it had a lot of really good information.
I agree with you. There was a lot to cover and a lot that came to my attention.
I like how a lot of it actually corresponded with a couple other classes that we're taking too, because I was able to find a lot more information from not just this class, but also observing children's competence class with Mary Lou. So I liked how there was a combo kind of thing.
I actually knew more about what the module was talking about because I was like, hey, I learned this in another class previously, right?
Mm-hmm. It definitely brought more attention to some of the topics we were talking about in that class, but they really did complement each other. So I have a question for all of you. What is your favorite part of the module? Which part of it really resonated with you the most?
Oh my god, I had so many favorite parts that kind of just really stood out to me. I was like, wow, that's really interesting. But personally, one of my favorites was the Reggio Emilia documentation and showing how you observe through that specific teaching idea and then taking down the documentations about it. Just because I find that when I go into becoming a registered early childhood educator, I really want to teach through a Reggio Emilia style. So I feel that really resonated with me and the ideas that it was giving me.
I really liked that document. I actually, as you were saying that, I actually remembered that I wrote down a little quote from it too. So it was the quote said that documentation not only allows us to make visible the learning of group and individual learning, but can promote learning within the group. So when students' learning is documented, children can revisit and interpret their learning experiences and how to develop these experiences further. So it really just I liked that those couple sentences because it really just brought together what the Reggio Emilia approach is and how the classroom looks and how the children are brought up in that space.
I agree with you because I like that children are able to go back and revisit their experiences because I think that's important because in the moment, I'm sure it happens to you guys as well, it happens to me. When you're in the moment of doing something, you might miss some things that you didn't realize happen, but then when you go back and look at it and reflect on it, it's hey, I forgot I did that. But then you think about it more and it resonates with you.
Yeah, that's absolutely the power of analysis in these situations. You don't always see everything the first time around, but when you go back and reflect on it and you really think about it and you kind of get down to all the little details about it, you really do begin to just come up with all of these fantastic ideas, and it's very interesting to see how it changes the more times you do it.
Exactly, and that's why I think it also helps the stimulating the memories of your experience. You're able to go back and remember that and look at that, and it just helps you remember and maybe progress your learning and your development later on.
Yeah, I like how revisiting things can help the children understand more of their knowledge and interests and skills, but then when you have an educator look over it as well, it also helps them reflect on their own practices and how they could change how they work in the classroom or any situation. And sometimes they can change their own curriculum to help that student grow and everything too and have a better learning experience. So I like how both can revisit and excel in both ways. And But I like how we're taught to not only just revisit it with the child and ourselves, but to also get other perspectives too. So to have like other educators look at videos or documentations that we've done, notes, or however we document it. I like how we're to also get other educators to look at that, because you get another brain or another set of eyes into it as well.
Yeah, and it just enhances the child's overall learning ability and our teaching skills as well, right? I really like, though, how it includes parents as well, because I think that's one of the most important things for families, that the parents know what's going on, are able to participate in a child's learning experiences and development. And so, like I read in the Reggio Emilia documentation, one of the links that was in the modules, how it's a great way for parents to participate in their child's learning in a more intimate way. And the documentation allows for the parents to understand the work and learning that their child is engaged in. So it just builds better relationships between them, the parents and their children, but then also parents and educators. And it's like the triangle, the triad of players, right? It just builds a better relationship between everybody.
I think that as a parent, that would be super important to me too, to be able to see all of what my children are doing while I'm not there, because as a parent, you miss a lot.
Yeah, and I feel like as early childhood educators, we would see more of the development and milestones that children are going through over parents, and I feel like that would also be very upsetting for the parents that they're missing out on that. So if we can do whatever we can to document it and take down what development is happening in the learning program, and parents can come in and see and connect with it, that's way better.
I remember in my early school years kind of thing, so like in elementary school, my mom would come into the school and talk with the teacher. There's this one teacher that I'll always remember, because she always had everything on, like up on the walls. Like the walls were covered in a bunch of like pictures or artwork or anything we did kind of. My mom would go in and look at all the things that I did, and she would come home and like ask me about them and everything. So I got to tell her about my experiences that she wasn't there to see, because I'm in school, she's at work. Other parents going in as well. I think that's a great idea to have things like everywhere in the classroom, because they get to observe that, like you said, and get a connection with the parent and the child, and then the teacher as well. So it creates like a better community. But the teacher could also talk to the parents if the child is having like any difficulties, because they are really the observers, right? So they can talk to the parents and ask like, hey, like how can I help in this way or this way, because I've tried a few different ways, and maybe the child isn't like receptive to many of those ways, so you want to do better for that child. And same with the parent though too. If the parent is having troubles, then they can also go to the teacher too. So it kind of just works perfectly in like all situations of the educator, parent, and child.
For sure, I totally agree with you. Jessica Crozier, we didn't ask you what your favorite part was. What was your favorite part?
Was the sit spot piece. I just found that it was a really good meditative experience, and I've used it with campers before, when I was working in a camp environment, though at camp we called it deer ears and eagle eyes. It's just really interesting because it really helps you realize just what you're missing, how much stuff fades into the background in your everyday life.
I was just going to ask if you actually ended up taking the time to go outside and practice the sit spot experience.
I have done it before, when I was out at camp by the lake. I find it to be a really nice experience when you can be immersed fully in nature. Unfortunately, around where I live, there's not a lot of, like, nature.
Yeah, I get that. I've never heard of the sit spot experience until this module, so I actually decided that I'm going to take time and try and do this, because I didn't know what the experience would be like. So I practiced in the backyard of my house. There's a lot of greenery out there. So I sat in the grass and really tuned into some things around me I wouldn't have typically noticed, such as like the itchiness of the grass against my skin, the humming of the bugs, the smell of a campfire a couple houses down. Cars were passing by on the road, people walking by on the sidewalks and talking. I could hear children running around their own backyards, talking and yelling with excitement. The warmth of the sun, which felt almost like piercing against my skin, just because we're so used to the cold weather, so it's finally warm and nice out, right?
Yeah.
So I thought it was a cool experience. So I totally get why this was probably one of your favorite things.
Yeah, I
So
liked it too because it was funny because when I was younger, my mom and I used to go on this trail that had like a lookout at the top of the cliff. And you would look out at, it was perfect in the fall too because the trees were beautiful, but we would go there all the time. So like there was always rocks to sit on and everything. So we'd be there for like probably a couple hours. It was just sitting down and taking pictures and actually looking at the nature. And so in a way, I was kind of already doing that all these years, but like I never noticed it till I read that article and I was like, oh my gosh, I've totally been doing that. That is so cool. And but I like that idea because it really helps children to just learn to slow down and actually observe everything and just enjoy life, because really everybody's on the go and everything, and life is just so stressful nowadays. And even for younger children, I find every single year it just gets more and more stressful. So like I like that idea of just sitting and observing, because not only do the educators observe, but the children need to also. And that's very important too, because then they can understand themselves as a person, because children are capable and competent, so they can observe themselves as well. So to be able to sit down in an environment and actually have that patience and just observe everything, I think is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's just a really good mindfulness exercise. A very good way to practice being in the moment and just
Exactly.
experiencing everything around you. And I don't
I
feel
agree.
that there's enough time for that in our modern lives for a lot of people.
So what was your second favorite thing in the module, Jessica?
My second favorite was the article and video about the Tea Party. I like the way that it examined all of the connotations, the societal values, the context, the skills that were practiced behind what may, for an outsider, be a simple tea party between two young children. And I found that the article and the blog itself just provided a lot of different avenues, and I kept getting lots of different ideas straying off of it for different things that I could practice with the children, depending on whether or not a group would be up for that sort of thing. I also found it was a good exercise in observation and in analysis. But I do remember that we watched it in one of our classes.
I remember that too. I noticed that a lot of the videos that we ended up clicking on, we've seen them in other classes that we've taken.
I noticed that too, especially with like the paint one as well, where like the children are playing with the paint. That one we've watched. That one, yeah, that one we've watched many times. But I think it's kind of neat because now that I'm thinking of it, it just came to my mind right now, but revisiting those videos is kind of like the sit spot in a way. But even though the sit spot is like nature, this one's watching the videos like over and over again instead of sitting in the same spot over and over again. But you're still like observing. So really, I find like the more that I watch these videos over and over again, the more I'm picking up on like even smaller stuff that I didn't even notice before.
You notice little details that you didn't notice before. That's an interesting thought. You're absolutely right. Those are very good connections.
One of the links that was provided was like the educational government observation, and like one of them was what to consider when observing children, and they were listed as like interactions with their environment, communication, emotional state and well-being, and interrelationships within the group. And I agree with you, Jessica, about how I've noticed deeper meanings of each thing that I just listed in those videos. After like rewatching them over and over and over again, I have realized that, their tone of communication, how they are emotion wise. Maybe when I first watched it, I noticed that they were excited, but then as you go on, it's like, excited over what? What are they showing? Like, why are they showing these emotions?
And you can notice the little emotion changes from moment to moment as the video continues, as the play goes on.
Yeah, for sure.
When the girl comes out of her shell, when they both are swishing the paint, and my favorite bit is when every single time that girl goes swish, swish, yay!
Another video that I really enjoyed watching was Violet's display of empathy video. I'm not sure if you guys watched that one.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh, that was so cute.
Right? But I found that I was paying attention to her facial expressions a lot and the tones of her voice, how it changed with everything that she said while she was pointing towards the book and the gestures she was using. I noticed that she said the character in the book was sad and then she gave it a kiss, which I believe behind her thinking that was her way of demonstrating what will make the character in that book feel better and happier. And I thought it was the cutest thing. It was like so pure and innocent, but then she goes on to say that the character is happy now. So I feel like in her thoughts that registered as maybe when her parents or someone give her a kiss when she's not feeling happy and she's feeling sad, that's what makes her feel happy. So she's doing that for someone else because she thinks that will make them happy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a brilliant display of empathy and what it is to be a good friend to someone that she's displaying there. She wants to make them feel happy. She clearly identifies with having felt sad at some point and having someone try to make that better. So she wants her friend, the character, to feel better. And I think that's just the most adorable thing.
But I noticed, like, as we're talking about learning stories, like, it kind of reminded me as, like, making our own storybooks or picture books. I thought it was a good idea to have both pictures and words describing what is happening in those pictures, as it will resonate with both children and their families, as children can see what they are doing, as they're probably limited to reading, but then family members can read a description of what they're doing, as pictures might not do the complete justice for it, how they're actively progressing, right?
I like that you connected it to the storybook idea. For me, when I was connecting it, I have like an art background, and mostly I was thinking of like displays on a wall, like Jessica mentioned earlier about her classroom. And I was thinking that it was similar to how when you display an art piece, and then you have the title and an explanation of the art piece beside it so that people can understand a bit about it.
That's a creative way of thinking about it.
Thank you. So thank you for watching JJM ECE Podcast. We'll see you again in the next episode.